Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back to another edition of the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Jackson McCurry, and today's episode is kind of a sad one. It's the final edition of the Offseason Roster Deep Dive series. We have gone through this so quickly. It's amazing. But today we're talking special teams, and then we have the conclusion where the man that's joining me today talks about who he wants the Browns to target in free agency and how he sees the first couple rounds going, how he would attack the first couple rounds of the NFL draft. It's none other than the one, the only Jack Duffin. Jack, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. It's the final countdown.
Oh man, we're finally here. It's crazy. It's crazy how quick these go. I was like,
yeah. Well, because I'm trying to think because the season started on slightly different dates. So was it 1 week later last year or two? Because I don't know.
I think it's one because I have that app Time Hop, and like as I'm going through it the last couple of days, like it was safety room. We're about a week behind. It's about a week late because about this time last year we were going through last week a year ago we were going through the safety room and everything. So we're about a week behind on schedule. So, but we are still rolling along. It's at those darn 18-week seasons now instead of 17-week seasons.
And I'm just ready for literally. I want next week to be free agency. That's what I want.
And we're almost there. I mean, like this time next week, the NFL Combine's going on.
That is real free agency,
and that's when it really gets ramped up. Which, some of the new reports about the Combine, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out because the prospects are going to be doing their on the field drills and bench press on the same day, and that hasn't happened before. And prospects. Representatives are not happy about it. So I'm anxious to see how that's all going to shake out and how it's going to hurt or help the draft prospects as usual throughout that process. But we're not talking about the draft. I'm going to steal Paul Brown's thunder. Like we're going to focus on today's episode. We're talking about the special teamers, and we should go ahead and start with the lock because I feel like the other two are going to be a little bit more lengthy discussion. We'll start with long snapper, our beloved Charlie Hewlett, who is entering, I think, season 8 with the Cleveland Browns as their long snapper. And he is the longest tenured Brown as well, I think.
Second longest.
I think
it's 2 months. He was added after Joel Bitonio.
Yeah. And he's been solid. There's like, I don't think, and no one's breaking down the long snapping, but he's doing his job. He's solid. I'm just gonna say he's elite at his job, and he's safe. He's a lock. He's only making $1.25 million. Not much else to say about Mr. Hewlett.
The fact that most Browns fans couldn't tell you his name tells you how well he's doing, because that is a position where it only gets discussed if it goes wrong. So going really well. He's been great. He's going into his final year, so it could be one where they just tie him up to another min deal moving forward, because if he's still fit and healthy to play, you keep playing him. And certainly with this off season where we've got uncertainty at kicker, uncertainty at punter, they could bring in competition for both. You then don't want to have that at all three spots, because that's when it starts getting crazy, where you're trying to assess what the kicker and punter are doing while, well, we need the long snapper because this long snapper is struggling, which is hurting your kicker or punter, and then it all gets everywhere. So, no, bring him in this season, and hopefully you can work out a deal just to keep him around bare minimum.
I'll never forget it. It was either 2016 or 2017. I had posted something on social media. I was like, the Browns can't find a quarterback, but damn, they signed their long snapper to a long-term contract. It was one of the. I think it was Sashi that did that. It was either Sashi or it was one of the last things Ray Farmer did. But not much to say about Hewlett. He does his job and he does it quite well. I'm glad we can get that. We're just going to get that one out of the way. But we talk about special teams. Now, I think the special teams as a whole could use quite an overhaul. Did not perform well this season. You talk about kicking, punting, even, returning, which we're not even going to get into, but special teams as a whole, like Mike Prefer, I think some of us kind of thought maybe he could have been on the hot seat, but he's coming back. But Jack, I think we can agree the special teams unit needs an overhaul, and it's definitely going to get one this offseason.
Yeah, the weird thing is you look at like PFF and the grading's not too bad. And I think the specials team units weren't horrendous. Like MJ Stewart was our best special teamer, followed by Mac Wilson, Taki, Joe Jackson. Those were sort of the group that led really well. Harrison Bryant had a good time, Greedy as well. So the dudes that were on special teams as that part were okay. Nothing crazy, nothing amazing. And I'm not expecting wonders from them. But yeah, the specialists was grim. The guys that when you say special teams, people think of, not good at all.
No, without question. They were not good. And expect both new people at those positions coming up this offseason. Let's start with kicker, because right now, Chase McLaughlin's the guy. And it's so funny because at the beginning of the season, he was good. He was consistent. He was making all his kicks. Like the first 2 months of the season, had no qualms about him. Even had said on the podcast, the Browns found their long-term kicker. Then once the weather turned cold, I know I'll even own it. I was stupid for saying that. But as the weather turned cold in Northeast Ohio, McLaughlin's kicking became very inconsistent, could not hit anything. I mean, he could hit some, but he was not very good. Missed a game to where the kicker named Chris had to kick the Green Bay game because of COVID, and people were still blaming McLaughlin for a missed extra point when it wasn't even him. Like, that's how bad it was. So it seems to me that they're going to bring in some form of competition this offseason. McLaughlin's back. He's a restricted free agent. He might not be back. That's going to be interesting, but I do expect the Browns to bring in some kind of kicking competition, whether it's a veteran, whether they, add somebody in the late rounds of the draft as a UDFA. We're going to have a new kicker in 2022. Now we just got to find out who it is.
Yeah, I don't expect any real rollout and big investment. I just don't think it's something the Browns are going to do. I think it will be a UDFA and some experienced veteran, or it could just be 2 UDFAs, and then you can go get that sort of experienced veteran to roll in near a camp if it doesn't work out, because someone else might have a camp battle and then another dude gets cut. If you're looking for sort of who's out there that free agent and played good last year, you've got 2 there, which is Nick Folk, who's a little bit older, but hey, it doesn't really matter at the kicking position, and the man, the myth, the legend, Zane Gonzalez, who Chelsea fans say must be good. They're the guys that obviously it's not going to be Zane. He just wouldn't want to come back, and I don't blame him because of all the Hugh nonsense. So it's one that I can't see anyone getting a deal off the team because they'll happily cut a dude and just keep cycling through. So I'd expect a couple of UDFAs, see what sticks.
Yeah, and there is some draft names out there that the Browns probably should be looking at. The number one, Dicker the kicker, Cameron Dicker out of Texas.
Yeah,
he's a great name. He's the top-rated kicker in the draft. Also, keep an eye on Jake Moody, who Alex Hale has touted his name. He's the 7th-ranked kicker based on DraftTech.com's kicker ratings, but he has a history of kicking in the cold. He has a history of kicking in the snow, and he can hit it from long distance. Not saying 50 plus. At that point, I think the Browns should be going for it in that case, but Moody's another name in mind that the Browns should keep their eye on in the draft process. But free agency, I do love Folk, and Zane was wronged by Hugh Jackson, making him kick with an injured groin. Granted, I think he injured it in warm-ups, but they could get Zane back. It would be nice because he's shown, went to Detroit, went to Arizona, proved himself to be a valuable kicker in this league, and he's still fairly young and could still have a lengthy career ahead of him. So, there's some interesting names to keep an eye on throughout the free agency and draft process when it comes to kicker. It's definitely something the Browns are going to address. They're also going to address punter. because we came into the season with Jamie Gillan, the Scottish Hammer, who had a solid rookie year, but has progressively gotten worse as the last couple of years have gone on. Went on the COVID list during the year, and the Browns brought in Dustin Colquitt, veteran punter, longtime punter in the league. I think he's been in the league like 17, 18 years. And then once Gillan was activated from the COVID list, the Browns cut him and rolled with Colquitt at the end of the year. They're going to bring in somebody. I just don't know who that's going to be. Obviously, when it comes to this as well, they have Joseph Charlton, who is he?
He's got a reserve futures deal, so he's the most likely dude that will be on the roster as we get through to the draft.
Okay, so he's obviously a guy that they picked up late in the season. Career average 45.4 yards per punt. So he has some experience in the league. Will be 25 in April, so that's good. But yeah, Jack, this could be another situation where they look to free agency. They may look to the draft as well to try to find a kicker for the future.
Yeah, if we look at the dudes who did well, you got Brian Anger and Thomas Morstead, who had good years last year. There's a guy with a solid one, which is Corey Beaujazor from Green Bay. Just someone like that on min deals does a job. If bring in the whole veteran group. Let's have 38-year-old Nick Folk, 36-year-old Thomas Morstead, and Charlie Hewlett will be the puppet. God knows how old he is. He's probably 30-odd. Let's do that and just have an insane amount of experience there, all on cheap deals, and we roll and die by it. You're not going to have any problems there with that crew. So how old is the man, the myth, the legend, Charlie Hewlett? He's 32. So he'll have 32, 36, 38. Together, they're over 100 years old in the specialist trio. Let's go.
And I don't mind them bringing in a veteran punter, but there is one name in the draft that I have my eye on. It is Matt Arezia. He's at San Diego State, has a freaking big leg, can make big kicks, and he's a top 150 draft prospect, which says something about a punter. I mean, hey, maybe Las Vegas drafts him. They've have their history of drafting kickers and punters high. There's also Jordan Stout out of Penn State, who's got a strong leg as well. And I've seen Trevor Sikkema of PFF mentioning Ryan Stonehouse out of Colorado State as another punter that could get drafted. So those are some draft names to keep in mind. I know there's Browns fans have been begging for Arezia to get drafted. If he's a top 150 prospect, that would be like maybe a 4th round pick, 5th round pick. Jack, remember what happened a couple years ago when they drafted Austin Seibert?
Yeah, I just tweeted the Team America puking gif. And that is exactly what it'll get if they draft a specialist. I'm willing to let it slide in the 7th round.
Yeah.
But any earlier than that, I will not be impressed. I can't see it genuinely. Because quite frankly, if that rookie has a bad first 3 weeks, I want to cut him anyway. And then why have I paid him all the guarantees and everything else? So just keep cycling them through. You have a bad game, get on the plane and we'll find someone else. It's ruthless and I don't mind.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're going to add a new punter. They're going to add a new kicker, and Charlie Hewlett will show them the way once they make it to Berea. So, that's the special teams room. That one's going to look quite different. And I think Browns fans are begging for it. I kind of hope they just go with maybe a veteran kicker and then draft a rookie punter, not draft a rookie punter, but find a rookie punter at the undrafted. Maybe even Charlton comes in and holds it down for a year or two. I don't know what else to say about special teams. It's not, I just get guys in and have them do their job. That's all I care about at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, it's you just want okay. It's like we don't need Justin Tucker smacking it from everywhere on the field. And hey, if you told me I was getting Justin Tucker, I would happily discuss pick 13. For how if you could guarantee me that consistency for an entire career, that's fine. is someone like that in the draft ever? No. He was a UDFA and it just worked out. So just keep taking punts until it works out and just cycle through. I don't mind if they bring in 3 of each and just go, let's see what happens. There's no need to rush it.
Right. I mean, there was someone in the draft last year, McPherson. That kid's got stones. It was pure luck. That kid's got stones. The fact that he goes out before the kick against Tennessee and says, "Hey, we're going to the NFC or the AFC Championship game," like as a rookie. Like you don't find many rookies to say that, and McPherson does. And he had a pretty solid rookie campaign, 14 field goals in the playoffs, which is an NFL record. He's hopefully, he makes it. Seeing 2 great kickers and Tucker McPherson, I think just Browns fans pining for that because obviously they haven't had a solid kicker since Dawson. So hopefully they find that, and hopefully I don't make early conclusions like I did with McLaughlin.
Who knows? It's one where he has a bad start to next season, and then they're asking themselves, what do they do? Because he's missed 2-3 important field goals in a spell. It can happen. It is such a difficult position, and it's not one where you can, we'll just drop someone on the rotation, or we'll elevate a different player under them and they'll get it back in a couple of weeks. It's like there is only one on the roster. It's like you IR them or you cut them, or you just keep rolling with their misses. It's difficult, but one benefit the Browns do have is they're going to have more 4th down efficiency. The next push is going to be for more 2-point attempts. And it's amazing the way the Browns fans talk about like the dreaded 4th down attempt, the dreaded 2-point conversion. And then it's like, oh, we don't like our kicker. And it's like, well, you got to do one or the other. Embrace it, and let's go all analytics, and just don't let the kicker on the field.
Yeah, it's not just Browns fans too. The media still doesn't get it. Like I think even good old Tony Grossi was complaining in the Super Bowl, saying, "Why did they go for it? Why stop going for it?" Like it's just it's the new age of football. It's gonna happen. You just got to get used to it. The old hats need to get with the times and embrace the new era of football and how it works. Jack, as we wrap things up, you have this not only on the article that's on the dogland.com, we talk about special teams, but you also have your conclusion and you go through an overview of free agency, what positions you expect the Browns to target, and you give names as well. So I'm going to leave that floor to you, and you break down what position groups you think the Browns attack and some notable names you think they should target in free agency.
Yeah, so first up, we've got quarterback. I've got 4 names in here. I just think it's going to be an experienced backup. The young upside guys, I don't think will be there for the Browns. They're going to go to other teams, etc. You Trubisky's. So I've got Ryan Fitzpatrick, Cam Newton, Jacoby Brissett, Andy Dalton. They're my 4 guys. I just feel like we're going to get one of those. Cam Newton's obviously one that Andrew Berry's reached out to before. Jacoby Brissett is probably the least likely because I think he gets a little bit more money. But I think they're just going to bring in someone 5 million, 7 million, 1-year deal to go, hey, if something doesn't work out with Baker, we just want someone to step in. And the most boom and bust guy in that group is Fitzpatrick. And hey, go boom and bust. I'm up for it.
Yeah, I would just say I feel like Browns fans are probably like screeching as you mentioned those names for quarterbacks because of what we've been talking about for the last month or so about potential upgrades, potential, trade targets. And it's like, are we really settling for these 4? But honestly, I feel like at this point, none of these quarterbacks that are out in the trade targets have really been linked to the Browns. It seems like Baker will be back. They'll bring in some form of competition to push him. And if he does falter, they have guys that have experience in the league, guys that have been successful. It wouldn't be bad for a team that's built to win, go to make the playoffs. Having guys that have had this experience would not be bad options to have at the quarterback position.
Yeah, no. At the end of the day, you're not looking at any of them guys to be
the long term.
Yeah, they aren't that. They're dudes to just come in and do a job when you need them to. So, yeah. go for it. In terms of running back and fullbacks, I've got no one. I don't think we'll see any free agents. Then in terms of wide receiver, lots of people are saying, "Hey, I don't think we'll go and sort of spend big." But I think if Chris Godwin and Mike Williams is there, then they'll make a move. Michael Gallup's another name, DJ Shark, Cedric Wilson, Braxton Berrios. Russell Gage is another one. There's dudes out there. I think they'll make a move or two at wide receiver. I just think they have to because they just don't feel comfortable with this group. So, I'd expect some move there. And as we've said, tackle, they made splash. Safety, they made a splash. Tight end, they made a splash. I don't think they're scared.
No, I don't think they're scared either. The interesting thing is the first four names on this list are all either A, dealt with injuries, or B, will be coming off injuries. So there is risk, especially with signing a guy like a Godwin or Gallup or a Shark, who are coming off significant injuries in 2021. But I'm with you. I do think they go out and sign a free agent wide receiver. It's just a matter of how much are they willing to spend and how much does their love of a potential prospect at 13, or if they trade down, how much does that bode into it as well? If they feel like, hey, we love Garrett Wilson or Drake London or Treylon Burks, they go and we're going to sign a tier 2 free agent wide receiver, like a Christian Kirk or even a Cedric Wilson, who I think is in that tier 2 range, or even a DJ Chark. Like, we're not going to go out and spend big bucks, but we'll spend some money at the wide receiver position. And I completely agree with you that I think they will do that.
I think you're going to get someone who's over 10 million. DJ Shark for me is at the bottom of that group. And then I think you're going to get another guy. Could they just double dip and go to sort of Cedric Wilson style level guys? Maybe. But yeah, DJ Shark, Cedric Wilson's a possible combination that they just go, hey, we'll run some dudes in there. Tight end, obviously David Njoku. Dalton Schultz for me is a massive long-term punt, so ignore him. But to be fair, am I sat here convinced that Austin Hooper or Njoku's the answer? No, I'm not. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go, yeah, we'll move on from both and do something else. And then the other one's OJ Howard. Heard a really interesting discussion last week on Jake Burns' podcast on betting on him as a high upside player. And I think it's a no-brainer. If you can bring him in for sort of 4 or 5 million to be your second tight end, let's see what the dude can produce. I'm not asking him to come in and be the one. That'd be too dangerous with his injury history. But if he can come in and produce like he did a couple of years ago, and he's had basically the same amount of catches as Njoku over his career, and he's been out for longer. So the dude can ball. Yeah, why not? Let's have a punt.
Yeah, OJ Howard. I mean, this was brought up by Jake and Quincy Carrier, who was on Jake's show. I'm intrigued. I always loved OJ Howard coming out of Alabama. Wanted him so bad in 2017. The Browns decided to move down. That was the Deshaun Watson trade. But we ended up getting a Njoku who has been solid as well. But if we can get OJ Howard to pair with Njoku for 2022, I'd be all for it.
So then a move at tackle. I just think they're going to bring somebody in, just because I just don't think they can feel full confidence with Conklin going into next season unless they chat to Petonio and go, hey, we'll leave you inside, but if Conklin has an injury, are you happy to jump out? So I just look at some dudes, and the one that makes a lot of sense internally is Chris Hubbard. And externally, the guy I like is one I've spoke about a few times over the last few years, and that's Cornelius Lucas from the Washington Commanders. 2-year deal, $2.5 million a year. I just think it's a nice, easy bit of swing tackle money that if he needs to come in, he's been good when he's come in, even better than that. So you sat there feeling really, really comfortable with him. The only thing I just don't know about him is it the skill set sort of zone and all that sort of stuff. It's not my cup of tea, being able to diagnose the movements of these big dudes' feet to think, can they play that scheme? But the dude's been great. So at that sort of $5 million over 2 years, I'm taking that bet all day long.
Yeah, I think they do add somebody as a veteran on that offensive line just because of the unknown of Conklin. Maybe to push Wills a little bit too, because this is going on year 3. We'll see how he responds this year. Hopefully, he has a healthy year because 2021 wasn't the best for him in terms of health. Hubbard makes the most sense, but if they do go out and try to find another veteran, if Hubbard wants to move on, Lucas would make the most sense for them.
Then some punt in the edge room, nothing on the interior line. So we've got Melvin Ingram, Justin Houston, Jerry Hughes, Charles Harris, Nwusa.
Yeah.
Those are sort of your potential starting edges opposite Miles. You got the cheaper one like your Tack and Olivier Vernon if other stuff doesn't work out. But that's sort of your, hey, we need some investment here. My gut says it's not Clowney, just because I think he's going to ask for too much money. So yeah, go out and just take a giant swing on somebody. Melvin Ingram's the one I would just love to see. And yeah, stick Melvin Ingram opposite Miles and let's have some craziness.
Yeah, I think we all would like to see Clowney come back. His price will be the end game when it comes to him. But yeah, they need to add somebody at edge and free agency. Just take a swing on a 1-year guy, like you mentioned. All these guys would be solid 1-year signings. You mentioned Tack and Vernon. That just depends on how their rehab's going. Tack, I think, is a big question mark just because of the Achilles injury. Vernon obviously has been off for a whole year now. Maybe the Browns know if he can or can't go. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, they do need to add somebody at edge, especially if Clowney walks out the door, which I think is expected.
Yeah. Next, we jump onto the interior on the defensive line. And I'm more or less of the mindset that one of these 4 dudes has got a really good chance of coming. And that is Fatukasi, BJ Hill, DJ Jones, Harrison Phillips. I just feel good that one of these 4 dudes, not more than one, because they're going to be around the 8 to 9 million mark. One of them will come. And that's part of the trade-off for not going for a Clowney. You can go, hey, we'll bring in one great defensive tackle. Would I rather have Melvin Ingram on one of these interior versus a bring back Clowney, and then on the interior we're going to have Sheldon Day starting? I just don't think that gives you the options you want. Spread a little bit of the money and just give multiple areas of attack rather than there is Miles, there is someone on the other side, and there's nothing in the middle. So I think it gives you a lot of upside. And then a cheaper name to add to the room, Tim Settle, Sheldon Day, are both dudes that, hey, I'd happily have both of them back.
Yeah, defensive tackle is something they really need to address. I think outside of wide receiver, that's the second biggest need on the team right now. The draft class isn't very promising. So yeah, I'm with you. I think they do go out and sign one big free agent there, and then they might add another guy. They may bring Sheldon Day back. I love the idea of bringing Tim Settle in. We both mentioned it to Stephen Thomas on the live Twitch last week when they were talking about defensive tackles. So yeah, they definitely need to attack this room. And I think Andrew Berry knows it. I think Joe Woods and Kevin Stefanski know it as well. So I'd expect they'd be players for one of these top defensive tackles.
Yeah, and then we've got linebacker. It's just easy to throw Anthony Walker's name out there. The experience, the veteran leadership can come in, do a job. I don't know if he's a middle linebacker, but Josh Bynes is another one they could easily steal away from Baltimore if he fits in there. But a middle linebacker that's going to come in and just give some cover, because who knows what's going to happen with Jordan Phillips. And then Elijah Lee, not a sexy signing, but he's going to do what they need to do on special teams, maybe even from the practice squad.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, yeah, something at safety. We've spoken about MJ Stewart. We've spoken about, in our last show, Jordan Whitehead. So just something in there that can offer an option.
So out of these free agent options, Jack, last year, Troy Hill was your obsession. Who was your obsession this year in the free agent?
Man, that's
I feel like it's Fitzmagic, but I could be wrong.
Who is my dude? I'm really banging the table for him, going mad if we saw him. Harrison Phillips. I really liked Harrison Phillips coming out, so part of me really wants him. Yeah, I'm sort of between three in Mike Williams, Melvin Ingram, Harrison Phillips. Who do I want to cut it down to?
You have time. I mean, we still have about a month till free agency, so
yeah, I want all three.
Okay, all right.
I'm just go for it.
I like that. And then when as it pertains to the draft, how do you see the Browns, or how would you target this draft? At least the first 3 rounds, if you were Andrew Berry, in terms of position groups.
Yeah, provided they get what they need in free agency. I just think those first, the pick at 13, there's effectively 3 options on the table. You'll pick at wide receiver. One might have gone, but I don't think it'll be more than that. The only edge that I want there is Carl Office. He'll be 21.5 by the time week 1 of the season comes around, and massive upside, or trade down. Those are the 3 options for me. And then in round 2, if you got edge, you get wide receiver. If you got wide receiver, get edge. I just think those 2 have to be the absolute place you start. There is an outside chance at a quarterback. I didn't put it in the article because I didn't want people to get upset that they punt on quarterback in round 2. Because if there's a dude there they like, you just pick him. You don't sit around and wait and think about it. You just do it. And then, once you get to round 3, there's a couple of picks. You can do it any which way you want. You've got quarterback, you've got wide receiver, you've got tight end, you've got offensive tackle, you've got edge, interior, cornerback, safety. And that is double dipping at wide receiver and edge. I think that is all on the table, that they could just go, hey, we'll just go for another one. And I don't think they're going to be shy about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think the first 2 rounds are definitely wide receiver and edge, whatever order. Trade down, I know people don't want to talk about it. Trade down is always an option. I think in the first round, when it comes to this front office group, we've seen it in 2016, we've seen it in 2017. They are not afraid to make a deal to A, collect more assets, and B, if they feel like there's a target that they could move down and get that they want, they will do it. They did it in 2016. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with Corey Coleman. 2017, it worked out getting Jabril Peppers and David Njoku. And then 2019, they didn't have a first-round pick. But in 2020, they didn't move down. In 2021, they didn't have to move up or down. They got their guys. So if they feel confident that they can move around, maneuver the draft, collect additional assets, and get a guy that they still covet, they're going to do it.
Yeah, and while there is uncertainty at quarterback, they need more assets for the next draft because the roster's too good to suck out. So we're not going to have a top 5 pick unless, hey, if they don't strengthen at quarterback and Baker goes down, then potentially it can happen. But the chances of the Browns having a top 10 pick is sort of low. They might scrape in the bottom, but not meaningful to really go and get a quarterback next year. So you're talking about, hey, if we can add a future second by trading down 6 spots to 19-23 range, then you do that. And then suddenly you're sat there going, hey, we'll give up our pick 15 next year. We'll give up our first in 2024. We'll give up an extra second that we've got this year. And then that's the sort of package you go and make to move up to the top 5, top so-and-so picks. But you don't have to get that high. We look at some of the recent years, quarterbacks have gone in that around 10 range. So as long as you can get up to that, you go and do it. But the more ammunition you have, the better. I'd rather add a bonus pick by going back 6 spots this year than have to give up our first in 2 years' time because we have no extra capital.
Right. And, people wouldn't want to talk about the 2023 QB draft class, but this one's not very good. If the Browns can obtain additional draft capital for 2023 and Baker doesn't bounce back, they don't upgrade the quarterback position, have that extra capital to go up and try to move up to get potentially CJ Stroud out of Ohio State, Bryce Young out of Alabama, or if there's another quarterback that comes out of nowhere. It's happened the last couple of years. Baker was that guy in 2018. Burrow was that guy in 2020. There's always a quarterback that comes out of nowhere, wows everybody, and then enters the mix as a top quarterback in the draft. So it's not a bad thing to move back, gain some additional draft capital, and still get a guy that's going to come in and be an impact player or contributor for 2022 and going forward.
Yeah, you just got to keep moving forward. Nothing's nailed down until you've got a quarterback. You don't have a team, and it's a simple and harsher reality of that. And who knows, Baker couldn't have an amazing year. You tag him, still no security there. He has 2 amazing years. You tie him up to a long deal. Suddenly, hey, we feel better about the position. And until that happens, it's going to be bouncing.
Without a doubt. So as we wrap things up, just want to say again, if you guys haven't read any of the work, go over to thedogland.com. It's all there, from the QB room all the way through to this episode where we talk about special team and the conclusion. Jack's got it all detailed, very long form articles, but they're great stuff to read. And then also, if you haven't listened to any of the episodes, go back. It's in the archive. It's been about the last 10 or so episodes where we broke down each position group and break it down, talk about the article, and we float out other free agent options or trade options or whatever comes to mind when it comes to these position groups. Jack, it's been amazing as always, buddy. You do some great work for us. We appreciate you, and we're glad you're part of our team. As we get on out of here, plug your Twitter, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so it's at Jack Duffin on Twitter. But it's one that when we get a bit nearer free agency and once we know the dudes that have re-signed, everything else and started sorting itself out, I'll have a lot more articles over on the Dogland. But no, and when we start signing guys, give me about 3 days. Generally takes 24 hours to 3 days for the actual contract to come out. We'll hear all sorts of nonsense and people will be like, is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? No one knows. Because who knows the way they get structured, everything else, how many years and outs have they got? But no, I expect sensible stuff from Berry, but he's not shy to make a little bit of an investment. So keep following on Twitter and I'll answer all sorts of random questions that pop up.
And as for me, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Jack McCurry08. Follow the Dogland on Twitter at the Dogland. And if you listen to this podcast, you enjoy it, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you guys listen. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because you can leave reviews now on Spotify. And share amongst your friends, share amongst other Browns fans. We appreciate everybody still riding with us after 5 years, going on 6 years now of this podcast. And we will continue to sit down and talk about the Cleveland Browns as we always do. As we get on out of here, until next time, go Browns.
Go Browns.